Tonight's question sounds simple. Are Noahides Orthodox? But hidden inside that question is something deeper. Is Judaism just another religion with endless denominations, like Christianity? And here's the first surprise. Even the word Judaism is itself not a Torah term. The earliest form of that word shows up not in Hebrew, not in the Holy Language, but in Greek. The word Judaismos, which is in the second chapter of Maccabees, which dates back to the 2nd century before the Common Era. Maccabees, of course, is not considered a holy book in our canon. So, it doesn't mean a religion. The word Judaismos does not mean a religion. It means the way of life of the Judean people, in contrast to Hellenismos, which is the assimilated life of people in the Greek civilization. So, before we can ask whether Noahides are Orthodox, we have to understand that Orthodox Judaism is also an external label. Looking from the inside, it's something very different. From the outside, Judaism can look like Christianity. Orthodox, conservative, reform, competing truth claims, but that's a projection. It imports a Christian mental model onto a completely different reality. Inside Torah, there's one covenantal reality given at Sinai in chapters 19 through 24 of Exodus and transmitted through an unbroken chain, beginning with Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, the prophets, the men of the Great Assembly, the Tanaim, the Amoraim, the Geonim, in the 7th through 11th centuries, the Rishonim from the 11th to the 15th centuries, and the Acharonim from the 16th century to the present day. It's one chain, one covenant, one Torah. So what does Orthodox even mean? What does this word mean? Orthodox is a Greek term. Orthos means straight or correct. Doxa means belief or opinion. But no Jew in Tanakh or Talmud ever calls himself Orthodox, because there was no such word. When does it show up? The term Orthodox Jews first appears in print in the late 1700s in German-speaking Europe. It was used by Jews who were influenced by the Enlightenment to describe the Jews who refused to modernize Judaism to fit European norms. They weren't forming a denomination. These people were simply continuing the Torah as it had always been lived. Until the late 18th century, there was no Orthodox, Reform, and Conservative Judaisms. There was just Torah. If the word Orthodox has any real content, it points to fidelity to the fundamental emunah structure that the Rambam Moses Maimonides, articulates. Where do we find this? Rambam lists the 13 principles of faith in his commentary on the Mishnah in the 10th chapter of the tractate Sanhedrin. And he calls them the Ikarim Shehatorah Omedet Alehem, the principles upon which the entire Torah stands. And here's a summary of these 13 principles. 1. God exists. God is one. God is non-physical. He doesn't have a body. God is eternal. Only God should be worshipped. Prophecy, our belief in the truth of prophecy. Obviously, prophecy that comes from true prophets. The fact that Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moses is the greatest prophet that will ever live. The fact that the Torah is min hashamayim, it's from heaven, it's from God, it's divine. The idea that the Torah is immutable, it is the same Torah today that we have in our hands as the one that was given on Mount Sinai to Moses. The precept that God knows about human actions, and also that God rewards and punishes, schar v'onesh. The belief that Mashiach will come, that the Messiah will come. And finally, the belief in the eventual resurrection of the dead. This isn't philosophy, and it's not abstract theology. These are the covenantal foundation stones of Torah Judaism. Now, how did these modern movements come about? Jewish emancipation, what we call Jewish emancipation, started in the late 18th and the early 19th centuries. France was the first country in Europe to grant citizenship to Jews, and it was in 1791. Then Austria, Joseph II's Edict of Toleration in the year 1782, although that was not an actual granting of citizenship. And then Prussia and Germany following through the 1800s. For example, the 1869 North German Confederation Law. And in the United States, Jews were citizens from the founding. There's also a movement amongst Jews that reflects the Enlightenment. It's called the Haskalah, or the Jewish Enlightenment, which took place from the end of the 1700s through the 1800s. And this was led by a person by the name of Moses Mendelssohn. And the Haskalah encouraged Jews to enter European culture, to adopt secular studies, and soften the boundaries between our communities and the surrounding European society. In the early 19th century, we see the rise of Reform Judaism. The first Reform-style temple was founded by Israel Jacobson in Saison in 1810, and the first major Reform prayer book, which was in German, was in Hamburg in 1818. The reforms included organ music played in the synagogue as it was played in churches, prayers in German instead of in the Holy Tongue, removal of themes like the return to Zion. In other words, because that's something that is very perhaps offensive when you've been granted citizenship, to be praying to return to another country. And also a de-emphasis on halakha, or Jewish law. So this is a reimagining of Torah. It's not a tweaking of Torah. In the mid to late 19th century, we have conservative Judaism, which was founded by a rabbi by the name of Zacharias Frankel, who withdrew from a Reform rabbinic conference in 1845, arguing that Reform went too far in moving away from the basis of Judaism. And he had an approach that was called positive historical Judaism. And the claim is that halakha evolves, Jewish law evolves with historical context. And the American conservative movement later founded the Jewish Theological Seminary in 1886, and it's still there in Upper Manhattan. The Haskalah, which spread to Eastern Europe, really pushed secularization, and also what grew out of that was secular Zionism. Many of the maskilim, as they were called, assimilated completely into the surrounding culture, and others became secular nationalists. Theodor Herzl, whom I'm sure everybody's heard of, who lived from 1860 to 1904, published Der Judenstaat in 1896, and he convened the first Zionist Congress in Basel in 1897, which was really mainly a secular movement. So let's get back to this question of what is orthodoxy, because we have to reassemble the timeline a little bit. Based on everything that we've been learning so far, until about 1800, there was one Judaism. There were multiple debates, but it was the same emunah, it was the same core faith, the same halakha, the same rootedness in Jewish law. From the 1800s on, Reform redefined Judaism, conservative Judaism modified it, and the Haskalah secularized it. But the Jews who did not accept these shifts were labeled Orthodox by other people. But here's the thing, it's very important to understand, these people did not start a movement. They just maintained the continuity of Sinai. The historical continuity line goes from the Pharisees to Chazal, the sages, who gave us the Mishnah in the 3rd century and the Talmud in the 6th century, to the Geonim, to the Rishonim, to the Acharonim, to the present day. One chain, one covenant, one Torah. Now, why does this matter to you? What are the implications of this for Noahides? Because the 7 Noahide laws only exist as a structured, binding system inside of the halachic tradition. Every detail, what counts as theft, what counts as idolatry, how justice is to be established, comes from this chain. And the Rambam says this explicitly in Hilchot Melachim, chapter 8, Halacha 11, and this is the foundation of Noahide identity. Anyone who accepts the 7 commandments and is careful to observe them is considered one of the the Chasidei Umot HaOlam, the pious amongst the nations of the world. and they have a share in the world to come. But, says the Rambam, that's only if they accept them and perform them, because the Holy One, blessed be He, commanded them in the Torah and informed us through Moses that the descendants of Noah were previously commanded concerning these things. But if a person performs the 7 mitzvot only out of rational conviction, he's not considered one of the Chasidei Umot HaOlam. He's not considered one of the pious amongst the nations, but only one of their wise men, a wise person. It's a good thing to be a wise person, but it doesn't necessarily get you a share in the world to come. What's the Rambam teaching us? He's teaching us that Noahides, the B'nai Noach, did keep these laws, at least since the days of Noah. But they are true commandments from which point on? For today, only when they are accepted because God commanded them at Sinai, through Moshe Rabbeinu, through Moses. This is one of the clearest statements in all of Halakha. If a Ben Noach, if a Noahide keeps the 7 laws as a commandment, it is because of the Torah of Moses. Not because of philosophy, ethics, or universal reason. And for this reason, this is why non-Orthodox movements cannot be a real anchor for Noahides. Because they do not uphold Rambam's principle that the Torah is divine, that the Torah is immutable, and is the binding source for all commandments. It's only the Torah faithful halachic tradition that preserves the transmission through which Noahide law becomes God's command, and not merely human wisdom, not merely ethics. So the question remains, are you Orthodox Noahides? No. That label doesn't apply to you. A Ben Noach is not a Jew. A Ben Noach doesn't join Jewish denominations, doesn't need to concern themselves with that. But if you learn Torah from the halachic chain of tradition, you are aligned with the tradition that people call Orthodox. No branding required. From the outside, Judaism looks like a grouping of denominations. But from the inside, it's one covenant, one God, one Torah. Orthodox is the name given from the outside to those who never left that covenant. For you as Noahides, the essential question is, from whom will I receive my understanding of God, Torah, and the 7 laws? So my blessing to you is this. May you anchor yourselves in the faithful chain from Sinai to today, and through the 7 laws, bring God's moral clarity to the world.